It's common knowledge that the urban formation is greatly contributed to by sculpture. Statues are usually placed in squares, augmenting the aesthetic imagery of the city, the landscape, and it is on the basis of sculptures that a certain space comes about. These are not only aesthetic objects, but also primary attributes of the city. The best example of this is the Yerevan David of Sassoon Square, which is epitomized by the bronze statue of David of Sassoon. The urban landscape formation dates back to classical Greece and has developed through the Hellenic world, in particular in days of celebration or to commemorate great triumphs and victories. Parks were laid saturated with sculpture, and this is a trend that survives to our days. Mostly to decorate the city, they place traditional sculptures or groups or which, regardless of dimension, style, and format, have the same designation. They landmark historical developments, heroes, artists, politicians, or epitomize or summarize major symbolic historical events and whatnot. Most recently, in the so-called postmodern period, apart from traditional sculptures, throughout the world, unnatural sculptures are also ubiquitous, dedicated to the urban folklore, fashion, and even depict animation, cartoon characters, food, or other eye-catching and unusual topics. Such works exist in small numbers also in the city of Yerevan, in particular in the Cascade, where the sculptures have contestable, dubious artistic value, but they're unique in their innovative nature, breaking the urban sculpture stereotypes that we have. As experience has demonstrated, such concoctions, as opposed to traditional sculptures, are etched in memory better because they link us to our daily routine. You cannot clearly classify it as a cultural value. These usually have no postments, there are no inscriptions designating the author or the title of the work. These urban sculptures are a result of interaction between human beings and their urban environment. These traditional and non-traditional sculptures not only are the cornerstones of parks, but also affect and form the taste of urban dwellers, are deemed to be the business card, the showcase of the city, and together with architecture form the cultural outline of the city, especially monumental and decorative sculptures in the open air also have a propagandistic, educational, and patriotic significance. During the Soviet times, Lenin's and Stalin's and others monumental statues in the most visible places in the city were replaced in the wake of Armenia's independence by statues of people symbolic for the independent Armenia and its history. In their substance, they substantially differ from their predecessors, but at the same time are united in the purpose they all pursue, to impact the Weltanschauung and mindset of people. The trend of erecting such sculptures, no city is immune to it. This group is opposed by the modernist aesthetic abstract sculptures, early 20th century onwards, organic sculpture works, as well as various installations which not only in their substance and form were different from traditional sculpture, but were also opposing the tradition. Abstract sculptures in the urban space are seldom combined with classical works, and having become widely spread, they also form small and big squares and public spaces as a result in various segments of the city, thanks to the juxtaposition of these two groups of sculptures and statues, the traditional and abstract ones, add flavor to the city. The plein air sculpture symposia have resolved the conflict between abstract and traditional. The birth date is 1959, when Austrian sculptor Carlos von Brandt initiated in St. Margarethen Fair of Austria. The first such symposium was organized. Various sculptures from different countries took part in this symposium. The purpose was to contribute to human contacts between sculptures of different countries and styles. Another purpose was to warm up the Cold War environment, bringing together various ideologies and mentalities. The success was unquestionable. Many such symposia followed suit in America, in Western Europe, in the USSR, and thereafter in Russia. Another good example of sculpture symposia is the USA Baltimore and Russian Penza cultural events. These large-scale sculpture symposia have been held also in Armenia. I'm referring to the Ijevan Sculpture Symposia, which commenced in 1985 and lasted until 1991 inclusive. This was the second sculpture symposia in Armenia. The first such symposia was attempted in 1978 in Yerevan, in the Nor Zeytun October Park. The works later were moved to the Nork Park. The next symposia in 1989 took place in Echmiadzin and was dedicated to 120th anniversary of Komitas. Another memorable symposium was held in 2001 in Yerevan, dedicated to the 1700th anniversary of adoption of Christianity as an official religion in Armenia. Its motto was the world of miracles and tales under the curatorship of Gagik Lazaryan. But these did not enjoy the same success as the Ijevan series of symposia, during which 113 stone statues were carved by 78 Armenian and foreign sculptors. This could rightfully be compared with reputable such symposia abroad. Such a large-scale event was not initially planned in Ijevan. Saro Saruhanyan, art scholar and renowned painter Edward Izabekyan, arrived in Ijevan with the purpose of organizing a visual arts exhibition, but they've discussed this with Gema Ananyan, the party leader, decided to organize a sculpture symposia, the success of which made it continue. The purpose was to create in Ijevan an open-air sculpture museum. The second one was purely cognitive and aesthetic, to come together, create in the same creative environment, discussing arts and sculpture. In 85, 86, only Soviet artists were invited, but in 87 onwards it became international. As a result, the objectives aesthetically shifted. People arrived who were looking at the Soviet reality and our people's daily lives from a different prism. Diverse works were created in unique interpretations of the then prevailing life. Mostly works were carved that pertain to the Armenian folk epic and mythology. It's remarkable that Armenian folk epic and mythology figures became a counterweight to the statues that have usurped the squares of Armenia, portraying unviable ideology, although as opposed to the huge Lenin statue, Yerevan Koçar's Davidov Sasyun brilliant work was erected, and in the main square of Ijevan, in one of the main squares of Ijevan, Vahagan, the dragon slayer's huge statue was erected. Almost all parks, entrances, and courtyards were embellished with sculptures created during this symposia. Most of them were erected in the city park, which was later renamed Sculpture Park. Considering the huge territory taken up by this park compared to the scale of the city, it could be named the City of Sculptures. Along the riverbed of Akhstev, it stretches, creating a unique, eye-catching landscape, whereupon these statues become the main attributes of the city landscape. Some of them were placed in the children's park and in the woodland next to the spectacle. The contemporary megalith-like monuments were placed at the entrance of the city at the Yerevan-Ijevan highway. The symbolism of Ijevan is that it included Armenian, USSR, American, Central European sculptors who worked side by side, au plein air, which contributed to intercultural relations, exchange of best practices. This incentivized, in particular, overcoming the uniformity of culture of countries, airtight countries like the Soviet Union. And the locals were attracted to follow the creative process of the sculptors, which the organizers, as Sarosar Khanyan, found as an innovative solution in the history of sculpture symposia. Usually, sculptures work unobserved, undisturbed, and the public is only allowed in when the sculpture is complete. Although in Ijevan, the contact with the art-loving population, with the sculptors, was immediate, making them part of the cultural process. This contributed to the establishment of the sculpture in the urban environment, since it was etched in the collective memory. These contacts with the sculptors and the campaigns and treks organized by the organizers towards the scenic landscapes of Tavush. Many foreign sculptors had their creative ideas, but in the meantime, these ideas underwent transformation. They created sculptures devoted to Armenian history, culture, and events, and some that were dedicated to other subjects could still be traced back to certain associations with Armenian art or fragments associated therewith. The people following the work of the sculptor were more interested in the statues that portrayed the Armenian epic heroes, mostly the daredevils of Sassoon and the Vahagan the dragon slayer. These were mostly carved by Armenian sculptors, telling people about their millennial roots. It's remarkable that those two subjects were opposed. If Stovinar and David of Sassoon's figures portray the caring of people towards the plant and animal world, Vahagan's figure is quite diverse because they analyzed his figure in a quite specific way from birth to immortality. This became the most beloved by the art-loving public because these were placed in the most eye-catching locations. Armen Davtyan's Vahagan Dragon Slayer formed the Ijevan Square of the fallen freedom fighters, and Zovinar's statue was placed in the Central Park's most visible location. By portraying Zovinar in a refined but still tense, like she is in a embryo state, there is an expectation that she will straighten her back and stand up. This is the princess whose sons Sanasar and Baldassar had to forge a new world. This is hallowed because at her back there is a church carved. There's a water drinking fountain carved just across from the statue with an inscription carved from David of Sassoon. This subject is carried on in another work symbolizing fertility, whereupon we see similarities with the Nemrut fertility mother goddess head. In the latter, it seems as though Scythian and medieval stylistic and semantic specifics have been woven together. Outside of the Armenian subject, several general history and mythology sculptures were created, like Vasily Fedorchuk's In Memory of the Scythians. The Scythian here is in a curved shape, a face of a priest. His hollow eyes and a big nose resemble 6th to 4th century BC Armenian megaliths. The priest is standing on a table-like podium resembling a tomb. In 1988-91, there were symposia held which coincided with political turmoil and war in Armenia. So most of the works created then resonated with these events. The Spitak earthquake, Sumgait massacre, and Artsakh movement can be viewed in a U.S. Varta Chemian sculptures, 7 wounds of the Holy Mary. The 7 wounds pertain to the prophecy of Simeon. Should the sword go through your soul in order for the message of many hearts to become apparent? It looks like a white megalith with 7 lances piercing it. This piece of rock symbolizes Mary, and it's bandaged, which makes cross-shaped figures. The 7 metal lances symbolize Holy Mary's 7 wounds that pierce her body from one side. There are 7 prayers, each of them had to heal one of those wounds. So this work is conceptually significant, representing a prayer for the healing of Armenian wounds. Margar Hmayakyan's Angels and Coyotes is another sculpture which condemns the destruction of Khachkars in Nor Julfa. It's a metaphoric work that can be classified as a classical installation. This one was to criticize the destruction of the Jura Khachkar graveyard. And the sculptor presented it in 2 stone slabs with real rails because Azeris were using the Khachkars to renovate their rail tracks. This was the first of a kind work installation in the territory of the Soviet Armenia. And this is an effective solution for the artistic environment of the city because it is very impressive in its innovation and demonstrates a movement, an action. Eriknas Galastyan's Tree of Life is of a different nature. It's also it can also be considered a classical installation. Okay, I understand. This is the Tree of Life with the characteristic as we see. There is a cross suspended from one branch and the charm from the other. 113 such works were created in Ijevan, which are formative for the environment of the city and are contributing to its